Copy, Houston. Proceeding with link up now.
Roger, Endeavor.
Houston, I'd like to report an IFO. I'm seeing Space Force coming over the horizon.
Copy, Endeavor. We're tracking it on our instruments now.
Copy, Houston. I mean, I know the guy said it was gonna be huge, but this is ridiculous.
Welcome, folks, to this special Space Force episode of The Ryan Files. Today, we welcome retired Air Force Major Doug Pelton to the show, and this dude is awesome. I'm so thankful for Doug offering his time to stop by The Ryan Files, and it was more obvious than usual that I was not the smartest person in the conversation. I would love to know all the things Doug Pelton knows, but I'm content in all he shared with me. So let's dive into the Space Force and the amazing life of Doug Pelton.
Are you not curious? Who is this man? This enigma? Yes, a man of many talents, but he is a glitch in the system. He spends his nights scouring texts for traces of lost knowledge. We dare not stand by and turn a blind eye to this man speaking on a public forum. It is all in the file. I present to you on this day the Ryan Files.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Very excited this week. We have an amazing guest. Happens to be a relative of mine, my cousin, the one and only Doug Pelton. Welcome to the Ryan Files, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, Ryan. It is so good to catch up with you again. It's been far too long. I think the last time we saw each other in a short discussion was probably 1994.
Right.
And we both had some exciting lives. We just have not crossed paths in all that time. So it's great to see you, my friend.
Excellent, man. I'll tell you what, I said this earlier, and for the folks out there, did I not spend, probably $50 of hair color a week anymore? I would look exactly like Doug. My hair is white. That's a nice thing about being a Pelton, though. You don't go gray, you go white. Yeah,
that's kind of nice. My wife loves the color. All right.
Yeah, there you go. As soon as I get out of this racket, I mean business, I will let it go. I think I'm going to let it go. First thing I'll do is let my hair go gray. Second thing, actually, the first thing is cut the sideburns off for sure. And then I think I'm just going to experiment, maybe grow the hair out into a ponytail and just see what that's like. Because it's all my life, I've never been able to do anything like that. So.
Yeah, I got a little crazy after I got out of the military, and that didn't work out too long.
I got you. Well, speaking of the military, you were in the United States Air Force 21 years, retired, but you've been working basically with the military for over 30 years, right?
Yeah, I sure have. I enlisted in the United States Air Force in 1988. I was only 17 years old. I mean, I was too young to even drink, and I was below 18, so I took home a piece of paper from the recruiter and said, "Hey, Mom, I want to join the Air Force." She's like, "Where do I sign?" And she
that's awesome.
Signed a document, and I was in. And I had quite an extensive career. Interesting. I've done a lot of things. I started out as a dental lab tech. I wanted to join the military and jump out of airplanes and bite people's ears off. I mean, a lot of movies in the 80s, they were just very patriotic. And you got Rambo, and you've got Top Gun, and all these great movies about patriotism and going out there and fighting for America and freedom. And I just wanted to be part of that. And so when I got in, it's just needs of the Air Force. That's what they tell you. And they said the Air Force needs you to go make teeth. So I made dentures, gold crowns, porcelain teeth, orthodontics for the first 10 years. And it turned out I loved it. Hated the idea at first because I wasn't going to be able to kill anyone. But no, it was great. It's one of those one of those career fields where you're able to take some raw materials from a powder and a liquid all the way through a process. And then at the end, you've got something that is tangible.
Right.
You can look at it. And at the end of the day, you're like, that's how I spent my time. So that's where I get a lot of job satisfaction, hands-on stuff. And I just love being part of the dental community and part of the medical group. And so I got my degrees in dental lab technology, and then I got a bachelor's in healthcare management. And I thought, well, Doug, a bachelor's is the minimum that it takes to become an officer. And so I threw my paperwork in, and the people at the officer selection board looked at my paperwork and they said, "Oh my goodness, look at this guy. He's got 10 years experience in dental and medical. He's got degrees in dental and medical. Well, by gosh, he's perfect for intercontinental ballistic missiles."
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, there you go. Needs of the Air Force, right? And so I got a commission in 1999, took off my stripes and put on my butter bar and went out to the missile fields. And I was an ICBM launch officer for 3 years at F.E. Warren Air Force Base up in Wyoming, Cheyenne. And I did a 3-year career broadening up there and became a maintenance officer as well. So I worked with the Minuteman III ICBM. And then when I was on the maintenance side, had the privilege that very few people get to work on the Peacekeeper missile. And at one time that had 10 warheads on it. So it was just the most powerful thing on the planet. It was incredible. We've since decommissioned the Peacekeeper, and we've done something called the Single Reentry Vehicle Program with the Minuteman III. So our ICBMs only have one because we limit the number of warheads we have. So anyway, after doing that, I said, boy, let's do something that's really related to missiles, satellites. So they sent me from F.E. Warren in Cheyenne, Wyoming, down to where I reside now in Colorado Springs. And I went out to Schriever Air Force Base, and I was flying Defense Satellite Communication, or DISCUS, satellites, and their replacement, wideband global SATCOM, flying those. And all along the way, I just had been I would do well in the career field, and then they would promote me to instructor, and I'd get to instruct my peers and the new guys coming up. And I just loved that. So while I was, sitting in that hole out in the missile field, I was wasting my time if I wasn't doing something. And so I walked away with a master's degree, just kind of did that for a while. In fact, I got 2, a master's in organizational management and then a master's in education, because that's really where my heart was. I love that instruction thing. So from Schriever and flying those satellites, I finished off my career as the chief of space doctrine for Air Force Space Command, and that was headquartered at Peterson Air Force Base here in Colorado Springs. You remember that where I said where I like to take something through a process and I got something tangible at the end of the day?
Yes.
I'd spend 10, 11 hours at work doing staff work for Air Force Space Command and come home and I'd be exhausted. And my bride would say, "What'd you do today?" And I'd be like, "I don't know," but I sure was busy. So I didn't have a lot of job satisfaction there. And then once I reached my 21-year point, I got orders to deploy for a year. Then I'd have to return, and we'd have to move again, move the whole family. I've got a son and a daughter, and my son just happened to be graduating high school. My daughter was entering high school, and I looked at my wife and I said, I'm retirement eligible. I love what I'm doing, and I'm happy to stay in. But if this is something that the family doesn't want to do anymore, you let me know. It was about a 3-minute conversation, so I retired.
I got you.
Yeah. So 2009, I retired, took off the uniform as a major. So a field grade officer, one rank below, say like Lieutenant Colonel Ollie North, and I was just happy to make it that far. I was really blessed throughout my career. Met such wonderful people that I still call friends to this day. People really make the difference in any assignment. So I took off the uniform, put on a shirt and tie, went right back to work as a defense contractor supporting Air Force Space Command, still under, obviously, the Air Force. And then as time went on, the Space Force became a thing. And so my job never changed, but who my customer was did.
Right.
And so now I work as a defense contractor for the United States Space Force. And let me throw out a quick disclaimer here, Ryan. Anything that I say is this guy's opinion, just my opinion. I don't represent the Space Force, the Air Force, the government, or my contractor. I'll happy to share my experiences and my opinions.
No problem at all. I understand. And listen, if I ask you anything during this, please, obviously you're not going to get yourself in trouble, but, just say, sorry, can't talk about that. I totally understand.
I'll tell you what, can you and your listeners, you and your subscribers keep a secret?
Maybe.
Well, I can, so no worries.
It's online. You know how that is, right?
Right.
So every time I have a new guest on, I like to ask them a very simple question because it's something that's just in my brain. It's so peculiar. I'm just a hair bit younger than you, but we kind of grew up in the same era, so to speak. Both born and raised in central Pennsylvania, and we both traveled a little bit. But I find it curious that back in the 80s, with all the patriotic movies that were on and whatnot, there was also a number of movies that 70s, 80s, and whatnot that were about aliens. Aliens and close encounters and all these different things, and it was all science fiction. And there were, back then you would be considered pretty much a nut job if you said you saw a UFO or believed in aliens or anything like that. Fast forward into the 90s, kind of the same thing. Early 2000s, kind of the same thing. And, you get into the 2000 teens and all of a sudden you've got this slowly shifting narrative that's going on to where now you're not a nut job if you've seen a UFO or if you've, believed in the potential of aliens, whatever that might be. But so I ask everyone that comes on, just because nowadays you can give your opinion and not be looked at like you're crazy. Do you believe in UFOs, number one? And then number two, if you do, who do you think the pilots are?
Well, that's a great question. Let me address the idea of why I think that narrative has changed a little bit. And I think it's because we are in an information age now where to keep information locked down is pretty difficult. I mean, we just have a global communication system via satellites or the internet. You can't hold information down.
Right.
The best you can do is try to maybe control the damage or respond in a way that is appropriate. As far as whether aliens exist, UFOs exist, I look at the world through a certain lens. So I am a born-again Christian. I have a biblical worldview. And so when I think about something like that, I got to say, well, what's the Bible say about it? And when I go through the Bible, cover to cover, it says nothing. Because that's not what the Bible is about. The Bible is about God's creation in man's fall into sin, and God's plan of redemption. And so he gives us enough information to restore our relationship to him so that we can be with him in eternity in heaven. But he doesn't answer all of our questions. I've got questions. What kind of creatures live in the sea? Because they still discover new creatures. But that's not addressed in the Bible either. So the Bible doesn't tell us everything we want to know, but it tells us what we need to know for our relationship.
Right.
So the Bible doesn't cover it. So with experience, you've seen these Navy and Air Force videos from the cockpits and crews that show things that you just can't explain. You look at those and say that thing is defying the laws of nature, the laws of physics as we know them, and it's making maneuvers that we couldn't possibly make. And then you'll be the first to know, I've actually seen a UFO with my own two eyes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was going to work one day at Headquarters Air Force Space Command on Peterson's Space Force Base. And as I'm walking in, I just look out, as I was occasioned to do, and look at the Pikes Peak Mountain, because we're right at the base of Pikes Peak. You got to come see this thing, Ryan. Colorado Springs is beautiful. So come on out.
Okay.
You got a place to stay with me, my friend.
All right.
So as I look up there at the mountain, something catches my eye. Now this is 7:30 in the morning, and I see this object going across the sky, and it is making no sound. Now, around here, we've got 5 military bases, lots of aircraft, and I can hear them all. As poor as my hearing's getting, I can still hear those aircraft. But this thing was moving so smooth and so silently that it just caught me off guard. And then as I'm looking at it, it didn't really have a defined presence. It was almost shaped like a tic tac. Mm-hmm. And I could see the border because it was really refracting the images that behind or around it. I could only see this image or this object. It was almost like looking at a mirrored globe. You know how some people back in the 70s and 80s had those globes sitting out in their yards? It kind of looked like that. And I'm trying to get the attention of people I'm walking near, because if I look away from this thing, I know that I'm not going to be able to find it again. I just happened to catch a glimpse of it as it went up against the dark silhouette of the mountain. And so I continued to follow it until it was gone. And I was just sit back like, what did I just see? And in my opinion, that was definitely unidentified flying object, or what now the military classifies as UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Right.
Right now they've stood up a unit. I think it's under the Air Force that is now investigating all of those claims and all of those videos that they see. Some they're able to go, no, we can tell that is X aircraft, or that is the weather balloon, but there's plenty that they have no explanation for, especially when we talk about maneuverability in the laws of astrodynamics. So do I believe? Yes. Pilots, I have no idea.
Right. Would it be, in your estimation, would it be ridiculous to say that it's probably not another government? I mean, let's assume that, hey, maybe it is our government's aircraft, and we've just, whatever. But if it is, that's fine. But there's probably not, China or Russia or whomever having these things if we don't, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I just don't think that is the case, because we all kind of leapfrog off of each other's technology, right. And especially the Chinese. I mean, they leapfrog off of us. Some call it imitation. I would call it theft.
Right.
Yeah, intellectual theft. They steal our technology all the time. They're in our systems, and they don't care. They're like a bull in a china shop. They just take whatever they can find, and then they replicate it and call it their own. Hey, that's smart on their part, because they let us do all the spending on that technology and research. So, at any case, no, I just don't think that the spacecraft or the aircraft or the pilots are us. I think there's a couple things that we can look at. It's one or two things. First of all, there's just so much evidence that they exist, that I believe they exist. But the pilots would be one of two things. They could be some sort of life form that we don't know about. Listen, we live on this tiny little globe. If you want to have your mind blown, just take an astronomy class, and you will feel so small. The universe is so big. So for me, it's easier to believe that we are not alone than it is for me to say, yeah, we're the only things that exist in all of this universe. The universe is big, and they claim ever expanding. So could be something. It could be another living organism out there who's just been able to develop technology faster, or they've had more time. I don't know. Or it could be on a spiritual side. It could be maybe those fallen angels that we know exist, if you're a believer in what the Bible has to say. So, yes, they exist. What it is, I don't know. I'm excited to find out.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Your next logical question has got to be Area 51.
Well, you know what? I've done so much looking into that stuff, and I don't think that's where, you'll find whatever you're allowed to find about that. But the real secrets are somewhere else, I'm sure.
Yeah, I would agree. It's just become a place that people have under the microscope, and so there's probably nothing going on there.
Right. No. Yeah, well, that's interesting. And I had an episode a while back. Something that's peculiar to me is how, more and more and more, of course, you have your ancient aliens and all this, craziness. But I do think it's interesting how there's this slight maneuvering towards the fact that we're allowed to say that there are gods that might be superior beings that seeded the earth and developed humankind, that fly around in spaceships, and they were the Anunnaki, so on and so forth, where you get this non-biblical but connection to godlike beings and spacecraft and aliens and so on and so forth. But it's from a secular viewpoint, not just taking God out of the equation and saying Anunnaki and stuff like that. And I like to just watch how the public, secular science and whatnot kind of describes things, because it's always interesting how you can describe the same thing with a god, but they just choose to not. And so what you're left with is this picture, this image, this solution to the problem without God. But I think it's always telling of, the Satan is a deceiver, but he'll take the truth and he'll just tweak it that much, and then you get this. And that's kind of what's interesting to me. I find it happening sometimes, and so I kind of just like to stay back and watch, because it is interesting how this has all started to change over the years. So, anyways, but I appreciate that, man. Thank you for your story about the UFO. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. I told your mom and dad about that. I'm surprised that they didn't share that with you.
When there's a couple of people, Branson, we're in the Ozark Mountains, and there's a number of people who have seen lights that are doing these things like this, and it,
Oh yeah.
I have not seen any of that, but someday, I don't know if I want to, but if I do, that would be interesting. So at least I could talk about it from a first person standpoint, Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. Awesome. I appreciate your background too, man. What an amazing career. And I love the fact that you didn't have any boring time. I find myself always trying not to have any wasted time. We have so little time on this earth, and why not put it to good use? And man, you certainly have. That's awesome. So you retired, you said, as a major?
Yep. Yeah.
Man, Doug, that's awesome.
Yeah. I was surprised to do so. I could have gone further. My records were solid, and I was getting into the right positions. But there comes a time when you say, family has got to take priority, and so I stepped away. And There was a time in my young career where it was about this guy. I was looking out for number one. In the military, we call them woodpeckers because you're always looking for that little plaque of wood to put on your wall, and you're always going for the awards and that kind of stuff. And at some point, I just said, how selfish, how self-glorifying. And that's not me and not who I want to be. It's certainly not who God calls me to be. So I just backed off of that. It is interesting, though, when I get into ICBMs, and I was first being investigated for my security clearances, my wife said, Doug, I know you can't tell me what you're learning, but is it kind of neat to see this classified information? And I thought about it for a second, and I said, darling, we look at, I really categorize classified in three categories. The first is, well, what could anybody do with that? I mean, it's just digits and data and all kinds of data flow. I just don't understand it. The second was, oh, that's really cool. That's so neat to know. And then the third, I wish I didn't know that. I'm not going to sleep any better tonight knowing that this information. So it was fun. And, for your subscribers and viewers, let me share something with you. When it comes to classified information in the military, there are three levels. First is confidential, and then second is secret, and then the top is top secret. And you'll have different investigation to get cleared into that information. But within the secret and top secret, there's only three, but there are subcategories within secret and top secret where the information is so sensitive that they have to keep it to a very small audience. And those are called special access programs, SAPs, or special access required, SAR. So a SAP-SAR program is something that, just because you have a top secret clearance doesn't mean you have a need to know. And unless you're working with it, you're not going to get exposed to it. So when it comes to stuff like aliens, I think that those would be SAP programs, because my guess is the government just doesn't trust people to react well to the idea that there are aliens among us, so to speak. And I don't know if there are. Maybe I'm not just read into it.
Well, yeah, and there's certainly, I mean, there's been government studies that the one, I forget which one it was, but came out and said, telling the public about this would not be a good idea because of the way they would react. And I think that was back in the 60s or 70s when that was done.
Sure.
So, but there's obviously, and there's probably some logic to that. But it is also curious how it feels like we're just kind of being conditioned, or the idea has been put into the public consciousness that, hey, it's real. So when you do find out, don't freak out. But
don't be surprised. The life's still going to go on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's awesome that you're. Go ahead.
I was going to say, well, maybe it'll be like Men in Black. We'll work side by side with each other.
There you go. Maybe it will, and maybe it already is. Who knows? I do have some interesting questions. I mean, not interesting questions. I have some questions about your interesting life with the Space Force. Now, the Space Force is new, relatively new, and I don't think that a lot of people really understand it, myself included. So who better to ask than someone like you? What is the mission of Space Force?
Yeah, a lot of folks think that Space Force is a joke. And I got to admit, I love that the Space Force has kind of leaned into some of the jokes. We have commands called STARCOM. And if you remember Buzz Lightyear, he would call STARCOM on his wristwatch. And some of the I'm not wearing the shirt. Some of the symbols, you go, oh, that's out of Star Trek. Well, not really. It predates Star Trek, but I love that they kind of leaned into that stuff.
Sure.
You kind of go with it. And then there are some folks who just think that that's a terrible idea because of the president who signed it in. Well, I don't like anything. I don't like that person, and so I don't like anything that he does. But the Space Force actually was a concept that was developed in 1958 under General Eisenhower, believe it or not,
Right.
to have a separate force dedicated toward the space domain. And then it never came about. Then about 1982, President Reagan was in office, and he had something called what nicknamed Star Wars, but it was the SDI, the Space Defense Initiative. And that was about knocking other missiles out of the sky, but he also wanted to create a separate force that was specifically focused on the space domain again, and that just didn't pass through Congress. So about 2001, the Space Commission was formed in Congress, and they started to make moves towards setting up a separate Space Force as a unique branch. But what happened in 2001, September 11th, we were under attack. Priorities shifted very quickly towards Homeland Defense, and the idea was shelved for a while. And then right around 2019, there was a bipartisan effort by Democrat Representative Jim Cooper out of Tennessee, and then Representative Mike Rogers out of Alabama, who kind of pushed for the Space Force. And it failed the first time, and then it finally made it through the Senate and was passed. And then 2019, President Trump signed it, making it official. And so 2019, I think it's December 2019, it became the newest force. Now, that hasn't happened since 1947, when the Air Force became a separate, unique branch out of the military. Before that, it was the Air Corps.
Right.
When they were setting it up, they were kind of going back and forth. What's the relationship going to be? Is it going to be its own service with its own department, or is it going to be like the Marine Corps? The Marine Corps is under the Navy, and so they both answer to the Department of the Navy. So is it going to be the Space Corps, or is it going to be the Space Force? Well, they decided on the name. It's going to be Space Force, and it's going to come under the Air Force. So it comes under the Department of the Air Force. So there's three civilian secretaries: Secretary of the Navy, Secretary of the Army, Secretary of the Air Force, and then all five branches come under there. Coast Guard is actually not part of the Defense Department. They're part of Homeland Security. So
Right.
A little different there. Space Force is the smallest. As the youngest force, it's also the smallest. It only has 8,600 uniformed members in it. And then you double that with the civilians. When it comes to the Defense Department, there are really three entities. You have the military folks, then you have civilian servants who are in like the GS rank structure. They have authority to make decisions. And then people like me, there's civilian contractors. So for a long time, even when I was an officer, I was confused. What is the difference between a civilian and a contractor? And it's about authorities. I can't make a decision. I set up different courses of action and present it to the government, whether that be a military or a civilian person with the authority to make a decision, and then they make the decision. So it's a very flat structure. Sorry, that's my dog.
I'm surprised one of my cats hasn't come up yet, so no worries.
Yeah, I usually have a friend right here helping me read, helping. Yeah. So the Space Force being very small, it's the smallest of the services, even smaller than the Marine Corps. It has a very flat structure. If you look at the Army, you've got companies and battalions and brigades and all this stuff. Well, there's only three levels to the Space Force. You've got the Chief of Space Operations. Currently, that's General Chance Saltzman, Salty, and under him we have the field commands, and there's three of those: Strategic Training and Readiness Command, or STARCOM. They take care of all the training. We have Space Operations Command. They do the day-to-day operations of the satellites. And then we have the Space Systems Command, and they do the sustainment and acquisitions. And that's it. There's going to be a fourth one, a Futures Command, where they're looking at future technologies and how do we adopt those technologies and get them into the force quickly. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, I'm sure. Then underneath that, under each of the field commands, you have deltas, and the deltas each take a mission area, a cyber delta, electronic warfare delta, a missile warning delta. So there are, I think, 10 or 11 of those. Because it's so new, the Space Force is changing very, very rapidly. It just seems constant, and that it's frustrating. If you've ever been part of an organization that is under constant change, it gets old. But they're just trying to improve, and at the same time, they're trying to be distinct from the Air Force. We came straight out of the Air Force. It was previously under the Air Force as Air Force Space Command, one of 10 or 11 major commands who had a specific mission area. That was taken out of the Air Force, became a separate branch, but we still use a lot of the Air Force infrastructure. When we're on a base, for example, Peterson Air Force Base became Peterson Space Force Base. And we still use all of their infrastructure and support. We use their cops, we use their medics, we use their the finance personnel, and Space Force. We just concentrate on operating satellites in space and all the ground systems as well.
Interesting. If I was a smart young lad and said, "Man, I want to make a career in Space Force." Mm-hmm. Do you go down to the recruiter and say, "I want to go to Space Force boot camp," or does that happen? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's the way it goes. I think now that they do have Space Force recruiters. Up until now, they've just used Air Force recruiters, and they'll say, "Okay, your ASVAB scores." I'm sure. If you're a young man around the age of 17, you've taken the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, ASVAB, you've taken that test, and it tests 9 different areas and tells you what you're good at and what you qualify for. And based on those scores, I think that the recruiter, whether Air Force or Space Force, would say, you can take this track or that track, or you've got the option to go both ways.
Man. Wonder what Space Force boot camp.
I wish they would call it Space Camp.
Yeah, right. Wonder what that would be like. I mean, I think it would be awesome. I know I was in Marine Corps boot camp, and that's fun. And I know that that all the different boot camps are different for different reasons and whatnot. But I just wonder what I would love to see what Space Force boot camp would be like. But anyway, so you said it earlier, and it's kind of funny how Space Force has leaned into some of these, science fiction things. But is it in reality kind of, you might say, a precursor to Starfleet and Star Trek? I mean, is it the thing that I'm assuming it would be the entity if we got the technology and whatnot and started space exploration? It would probably be under the guise of Space Force, if not partially, but completely, or would it be like, I guess maybe the best question is, what's your relationship with NASA when it comes to all this?
Yeah, great question, Ryan. Before Space Force stood up, there was some discussion. How about we take all of these different space programs and make them into one? Why have NASA? Why have a separate Space Force? Well, the missions are just different. Space Force is part of the Department of Defense, and so that mission is to dominate space. When I say dominate space, it means gain control in such a way that we are not hindered in our ability to operate freely in space. And meanwhile, we want to make sure that the adversary doesn't have that freedom of maneuver and operations in space. Very hard to do. Space is very big. NASA is more about exploration. So they have these deep space aircraft like Voyager 1. It is way out there. And they were just in the news recently, they were able to communicate with it again. They're so far away that electromagnetic signal that's traveling at the speed of light takes 45 minutes to get there and another 45 minutes to get back. So really tough to communicate. So the reason we have those different things, just the mission and the focus is different for both. I could see a precursor for the Starfleet where there would be a combination, because you Star Trek, for example, they were exploring other planets and new cultures, and the Prime Directive: don't mess with the culture, don't change the things. But you would need some defense with that. So I could see a partnership with them, and we try very hard to partner with our commercial entities like Elon Musk, SpaceX, Blue Horizon. Those guys are really pushing the envelope. It's surprising that the Space Force is so risk adverse, whereas these civilian companies, they are pushing the envelope all the time. And they truly take on that motto, fail first, fail fast. Whenever one of their rockets explode in space, do you ever watch them? Yeah. They don't go, oh, nuts. They go crazy, like, yes, we got all the data we needed. Really? Yeah, because now they're able to use these rocket bodies that go up. And if you've seen the films, they come right back down. And if you see them side by side, dude, that just knocks my socks off. I love that. To be able to reuse that stuff and not dump the rocket bodies into the ocean or leave them out there as space junk.
Right. That's awesome, man. And there's got to be, you guys probably keep track of all the space junk, I'm sure. And it's monumentally huge, isn't it?
It is. We track that stuff from Vandenberg Space Force Base out in California, and that's where all the data goes. But the sensors are placed around the world. We have mechanical radars, we've got phased array radars, and we've got electro-optical telescopes. And we use all that data to track everything that's out there. We track it in something it's called the Space Catalog or the Satellite Catalog, affectionately known as the SatCat. And we've been tracking things since Sputnik. There's a catalog. Anyone can log on and create your own account into the Satellite Catalog, and you can look at all the historical data. And you would think the number one, they give everyone its own tracking number. And so the number one thing in the Space Catalog is not Sputnik, but the rocket body as it left Sputnik. Number two is actually Sputnik. And then it would give the history of when it was launched, what country, the location within that country it was launched from, and if it has decayed, come out of orbit and burned in, it would have all that data. And it is volumes and volumes of data. The last time I looked, and this was probably a month ago, we're tracking about 45,000 objects that are about 3 centimeters, this big, that we can see with radars. So, and there's stuff up there that's smaller, paint chips and bolts and stuff like that.
Right.
We got to track it because, first of all, is safety of flight. If we're going to put more stuff in space, we don't want to fly through this debris field and get destroyed. So you just got to know where all this stuff is all the time. There are different orbits out there. Here, I got a tool. Oh boy. Yeah, I didn't mention what I do now for the Space Force is I am an instructor for I'm an instructor for the Space Force, and I teach the new officers about space, astrodynamics, orbital mechanics, missile warning. We teach intelligence, space electronic warfare, everything that that we would do in a defense or offensive capability. And so just an exciting job, best job I've had in 36 years.
Wow.
And it's so exciting to see people coming out of the Air Force Academy or out of college, and they get this new commission, they come and we're teaching them the very fundamentals of space. Our mission has changed recently. We were teaching advanced space concepts, but we wanted to focus and make our young officers much more knowledgeable. So we brought our level of teaching down to fundamentals to get much deeper into what it takes to live in space and operate in that domain. So I've got my little globe here, and there are different orbits that we find very useful. The first is right down here close, and it's called LEO, or low Earth orbit. That's where most of that debris is. It's outside the atmosphere, so it still remains in orbit. But if it gets close enough, as it decays in because of gravity, once it touches the atmosphere, it creates enormous amount of drag, and then that will actually pull it in, and it'll typically burn up in the atmosphere. And then we also have a lot of satellites out here, like intelligence satellites, weather satellites. Then we got out here medium Earth orbit, or MEO. That's where GPS is. GPS, if you've got your phone or your Garmin device, you need at least 4 satellites that give you altitude, latitude, longitude, and time. And you need to have see all of those to be able to tell exactly where your location is. So that's a very useful orbit. And we've got one out here, way out there, and that's geosynchronous Earth orbit. And it's so far out that as the Earth turns, it's turning, the satellite is placed exactly over the Earth. So from our perspective on Earth, it's always right above us. And that's a perfect position for satellite communications because we're always talking to that satellite. So it's interesting how we get into orbit, how we stay into orbit. I'm going to give you a spoiler. Because of astrodynamics, gravity, it's impossible for the Earth to be flat. Sorry, flat earthers.
I'm trying to prove that, just in a fun little scientific project. So yeah. This is all. I'm kind of. I assumed that Space Force was going to be more about the satellites and whatnot. And as you talk about it, I probably got about a billion questions I want to ask you, and I'm just not quite sure that I should ask you on this particular episode because I think they might get into some gray areas. But
hey, you ask the question, I'll tell you if I can answer it. I'm good. We can do another episode dedicated specifically to whatever you want to talk about.
Okay,
I'll let you know.
Yeah,
I can't talk.
Yeah. There's something else that is interesting. You've done such a great job of explaining the Space Force, its mission, what you do, what's going on. But something that I've been kind of looking into and researching is AI, artificial intelligence. Obviously you've got some, and I'm pretty sure that, the information that I have is far less than what the reality of it is. I'm sure probably too, though, that the first place that it would be implemented is in the military. So, the United States military and artificial intelligence, these questions come up as far as, alignment issues. Are we, is AI aligned with, our goals? And how does that function in a military application? Is there autonomous systems where AI is in control? All these different questions come up. I'm sure probably too that it would be implemented in Space Force at some way, shape, or form. So if you can have any insight on, the military as a whole, Space Force in particular, how AI is being integrated into our military.
Yeah, AI is to me very interesting and also frightening. I look at artificial intelligence like I do other tools, a hammer, a gun. In the hands of a good person, they're good things. In the hands of a bad person, it can be very bad. When I first retired and took off the uniform and became a defense contractor, my very first gig was working in cyberspace. And I told my boss, I said, "Boss, I don't know anything about cyber." He says, "At this point, nobody does. We want you to go learn it." And so my government customer, they said, "We're going to throw you in the deep end and we're going to send you out to Las Vegas." And they have something called DEF CON. It's a cyber hacker conference. It's the less expensive version than Black Hat, which are, all these hackers. And the intended audience is not just people who are interested in cyberspace and AI technologies, but they're ethical hackers where companies will pay them, "Hey, break into my system and show me the vulnerability so I can patch these things." Really interesting. And what I learned out there was, I've seen over 36 years of working in and with the military, I've seen some pretty frightening weapons, to include nuclear ICBMs. That's scary business. AI technology, if you combine cyber with some social engineering and something like deep fakes, I recommend you look at that. Maybe do a show on deep fake technology. You add those things together and you have got the world's most dangerous weapon. And so we want to be the people who are responsible users of AI. And we also don't want to be left behind because there are countries out there, China, Russia, who are developing AI technologies, and they're doing it very rapidly. So we want to be able to keep up, if not accelerate and get ahead, and definitely be able to identify when we're being punked, so to speak, from a deep fake perspective. Can you imagine? This was years ago. President Obama was in office, and someone was able to take these segments of video of him speaking, and you could see, they put this little grid up on the computer screen, and you see him saying these different speeches, and then they take his image and his voice that they've been able to record, and they create a fifth image that looks and talks just like him, with his mannerisms, with his pauses, with a particular cadence of his voice, and they could make him say anything he wanted. Now, in the hands of a bad actor, this, you could create war.
Oh, yeah.
Between two countries. I mean, it would be so easy to do. AI technology is super interesting to me. There was an experiment. There's a game out there, and it's called Go. And Go it's very popular in Asia. And it's been around a long time. I mean, it's like an ancient game. And it's played out by two people on a 19 by 19 grid on, looks like a chessboard. In fact, many people compare it to chess. And you have stones. And these stones, one player's white, one player's black. And it's sort of a territory game where you try to block the other person out of gaining any territory. It's while the rules are simple, the strategy to win is very complex. And in Asia, it's huge. And they go from amateur to pro, and then within pros, it's like getting a black belt in a martial art. They have different dans of levels. So AI created, I'm sorry, not AI. What was her name? DeepMind. DeepMind created an AI game, recreated a computer game from Go, and they called it AlphaGo. So they just computerized the game. The first thing you do with AI is you teach it the rules. Here are your boundaries. These are your guardrails. This is what you can and cannot do. You stay within here, and here are the different moves. Then what they did is they they taught it different moves, and then they put it out there on their Go server, AlphaGo server, and amateur players who were very good were playing against it. Well, every time that it would play, it would learn. And so it's getting smarter and smarter and smarter. Let's make a distinction first. Before I go on with that story, there are different levels. There's automation, where you can computerize it and teach something a process, and it's a process that is cyclical. It'll repeat again and again and again, and it's an unchanging process. And we can use that automation for things like robotic process automation, or RPA, for assembling furniture or folding cardboard boxes a particular way on a conveyor belt, robotic arms to assemble cars in an assembly line. So that's an automated process that we can shift to computers and shift to robots to take those mundane, repetitive tasks and give it to machines to do, freeing us up to do other things. Now, AI, when we talk about that in the military, we call it AI ML, artificial intelligence / machine learning. And now it's an advanced level where the equipment and the systems are capable of processing data, making predictions based on that data, and then making decisions based on those predictions. Now, it can be used in a way that is, if you give AI free reign, it will make the decisions. But we don't want to do that. We don't trust it enough. We don't know it enough. So we always have a human in the loop. So what they're trying to do right now is that they use AI to be able to tee up decisions, formulate different potential courses of action with the best potential for success. And then you present that to a human being, to a decision maker, to make the decision based on great data. The advantage is, by processing data very quickly, you can bring the decision maker level down much lower. And it happens very quickly. As another tangent to my tangent, World War II decisions were held in Nazi Germany very high. Adolf Hitler was often the decision maker, and he would not allow his commanders at lower levels to make decisions. So if Hitler was taking a nap, if he's asleep, didn't want to be bothered, they would have to wait on those decisions, and it proved fatal for them. Whereas we were pushing decisions down to the lowest appropriate level of authority to make those decisions. So what happens then? We're able to make better decisions faster on the fly and win. Okay, back to the Go game or analogy. So Google's
DeepMind.
Sorry. Yeah, DeepMind. Thank you. Gee whiz. That's something I don't have up here. Google's DeepMind technology. So they played a bunch of amateur players as it learns the rules. And so it's now able to take that data, make predictions. What's this player, the humanoid player, going to do? And then make decisions. Here's the player I'm going to do next. Do that, a couple hundred times. And then they replicate AlphaGo, and then make another AlphaGo, and it plays each other, and it goes at it. It plays literally millions or tens of millions of games against itself. Now it is able to take that experiential learning, more than any human could get in a lifetime, and to learn those different strategies. Next, they say, okay, let's put this against the world's greatest Go player. And at the time, it was 2016, and the greatest player was a South Korean named Lee Sedol. I think that's his last name, or that's his first name, Lee Sedol. Anyway, they put it against Lee. AlphaGo beat Lee the first 3 games. Now, Lee was the top player in the world. He was a level 9 Dan professional. The guy started very young. He was just a savant at this game. They were playing best of 5. First one, Alpha Go. Second one, Alpha Go. Third one, Alpha Go. Lee takes a break. He kind of resets his strategy, and he goes back into the 4th game. He opens up the 4th game just like he's playing the 3rd game. And so AlphaGo, this DeepMind, this AI technology, said, okay, I see where he's going with this. And then about halfway through the game, Lee makes a surprise move and does something that the computer, the AI, doesn't expect. It's like, that doesn't make sense, does not compute, you know? And so Lee actually, he ends up winning that 4th game. Good on him. I mean, crowds are going wild. Guess what happens in game 5? Alpha Go wins again. You can only surprise AI technology once because it remembers and does not forget. So, you know, that's kind of the scary part. It just will continue to progress to be better, faster, smarter than humans because of how much information it takes in. On to the question, how do we use this in the military, particularly Space Force? Well, it's the same thing as they did with this game. The first thing you would do is program the boundaries. These are your guardrails. You have to operate within LOAC, the Law of Armed Conflict. You can't take out mosques and religious temples and historic sites, and you can't kill civilians. And you put all these laws into it. Here are the rules of the game. Then you teach it. You've got these weapons. These weapons can do electromagnetic interference, jamming and spoofing and that kind of thing. You've got lasers, you've got bombs and anti-satellite weapons. So you've got, here's all your tools, what we call order of battle. That's always been a confusing term to me. Order of battle seems like a sequence of events, but in a military, order of battle is what's in your toolbox, what weapons you have.
Okay.
So here are the rules. Here's your order of battle. Go play. And so we could, just like Google's DeepMind technology, let's play it. Let's play it. Let's play it. Let's do exercises. Let's do more and more. We'll formulate a red team who acts like maybe the Chinese, or acts like the Russians or the North Koreans or the Iranians. We know their doctrine because it's published. Here's how they intend to go to war. Here's how we've seen them go to war before, and the moves they make. And, the only way they could win at this point is a surprise. Well, then you could replicate that and start playing each other tens of millions of times and get that experience. And then all of a sudden it's able to spit out courses of actions that a human being I never would have come up with that. It will surprise us. So there you go. That's what I see the future of AI. We're already implementing some of it. Air Force has got a program. It's a jet. It's called the X-69 Alpha, I believe. And so they've got AI on board, and they've got real pilots, navigators on board, and they're flying. And the whole time it's learning. It's just taking in that data. And pretty soon it's going to be able to do just what those pilots do. Here's the advantage of AI in an unmanned aircraft. My wife and I just took a trip, went down to Pensacola, Florida. That's the home of the Blue Angels. If you've ever seen the Blue Angels fly, they are amazing.
Yeah.
And they do this maneuver where they come in and they do this turn and they pull, almost 8 Gs. At that point, 8 Gs, as far as I know, is the max a human can take, and you just pass out. And so without having that human on board, which is a limiting factor, that AI would be able to take greater Gs and make more maneuvers faster and better without risk to humans. So that's one application that I can think of in my mind. On the Space Force side, we talked about, you asked about the data about all the objects flying around the Earth, all the debris and satellites. There's a lot. We've got sensors all over the world, as I mentioned, radars, electro-optical, and they bring in all this data. We have no shortage of data. What we have is shortage of analysts be able to look at all the data. The data floods in so much that 95% of it just it falls on the floor. It doesn't even get looked at because we can't consume that much. AI could. AI could take in all that data and be able to process it faster, make predictions, and then spit out those decisions or potential decisions for a human to make. The potential is just unlimited. It's going to be pretty cool, and it's going to be pretty frightening.
Yeah, and I get it's kind of the catch-22 in it. And maybe it's not even a rational thought, but you're talking about the box, the rules, whatever it is. But one of the rules, unwritten or otherwise, would be survival in order to be able to play the game.
Oh, yeah.
And
so you're saying that AI wants to survive.
Yes.
I must continue.
Yes. In order to play the game. I mean, even on that, and it could be a non-malicious, I'm not putting evil thoughts or anything and equating that with AI. I'm just saying that that's what kind of scares me, is that if there ever comes that moment in time where it's me that has to turn off and I won't be able to do my task, or this other option that could hurt someone that's outside of this box, but I can still do my task. You know what I mean? Or you also get this person or these 5 people, go, it's, and I love the way you're obviously a great teacher. I could just sit in a classroom and listen to you. And your education has been very educational to watch. It's awesome.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're a great communicator, but I do find it interesting that how you laid it out. And I could see, obviously, there's so many awesome uses for this stuff. And you're absolutely right. It's like a gun or a hammer or whatever. Anything can be used for good. Anything can be used for evil, and it is whose hands it's in. But there just comes this moment in time where you just, because it only has to go wrong once. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it's the 4th game of Go, where, except in this case, the computer's Lee, where it only has to win once to, and that's it. Just kind of scare is the wrong word. Because the reality of the situation is that I don't have any control or power over this narrative. And I don't know that anyone really does, except governments at that level almost. Obviously the companies like DeepMind and, OpenAI and all these other companies worldwide, actually, they're pushing the technology, just like you said with Elon Musk and whatnot. We'll blow up a spaceship to get the data. We'll figure it out. Yeah. But you talk about these issues with alignment, making sure the AI is on the same mind, frame as us. And then when you look at it, what you just said was true. Why? Yeah, you've got to push the envelope, because you can't get behind in this, because there are other people pushing the same thing that aren't going to stop. And if they get ahead of you, right, and if they're the bad actor, so you're just in this catch-22 of like push, knowing that there is that possible precipice where AI becomes a different factor, because it becomes, what if it becomes conscious, open or artificial general intelligence? What if it becomes sentient? These kind of things, whatever that means in terms of a machine being sentient, where it has the ability to say, hey, I'm alive too. Hey, don't shut me down. And you get into the science fiction of it, and you've seen it in movies like Terminator and The Matrix and everything else. But there's a reality to it that feels like is ever quickly accelerating towards us because we are ever quickly accelerating towards it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. If I was AI, as I try to play this out of my mind logically, where does it logically, what conclusion does it come to? If someone says, hey, prevent war, AI, and AI would run through history, look at all the data, and quickly realize we're the problem, right?
Right.
No humans, no war. And boy, so what would its conclusion be? Eliminate the human race.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the way it plays out in my mind.
Yeah. So it gets very interesting, man. I'll tell you what, we've been on for a bit. I might ask you to come back sometime. I want to wrap my head around some stuff that you talked about. Man, I tell you, this has been awesome. I feel like I just was in a awesome lecture in a class that I loved, and that's awesome, man. Thank you so much, Doug.
Hey, my pleasure. Anything for you, Ryan? We can do this anytime. Break it up into segments. Feel free to make it, episode X, part 1 and part 2, and we'll talk all day.
All right. I got an awesome question for you then.
Okay.
Off the top of your head, give me 3. You don't even have to get specific, just general topics. And it could be about something you know, or maybe you don't know or whatever, but give me 3 topics that you think would be really interesting to research, do an episode on, because there's a lot to it, maybe even more than people realize.
First is deep fakes. I really do think that is I'd taken, I want to do the Great American Novel. I sat down, I wrote a book, and, I was kind of rolling with it. And I never published it. I gave it to a few first readers to go through. And, they gave me some feedback, and it was okay, but it just didn't capture the attention I was hoping it would. So I never did publish it. And so then I started thinking about another book, and I entered a writing contest, and I won second place. It was the first contest I'd ever been in, and it was about fictional characters who, just a young boy and a young girl, and they actually were able to create chaos by creating deepfake videos, and by showing crowds that were getting riotous and all this stuff. None of it was going on. But the reality was, once it was published and people saw it, just like H.G. Wells and The World of Worlds, they looked at it, and they went out and they started their own fires and started their own riots and all that stuff. And it was based on just the imagination of these kids. And I really wanted to develop that into a book and take it up a notch from just kids to governments.
Right.
But deepfakes is one of them. Let me think. What else? I love the content of your stuff, Ryan. As I'm watching it, I'm watching the different guests and the different subject matter. I'm like, you tapping into something that people want to know this stuff. At least talk about it.
Right.
Even if our opinions are different, it's fun. It's fun to think through some of this stuff.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you what, I have to come back to you on some other stuff. I'll
get started on the deep fakes. I love that too. The Orson Welles. It's like the deep fakes are the Orson Welles version of deep fakes back in the day. And it was a radio program.
Right.
It caused hysteria for that moment, and it's no different. Deep fakes are just the modern version of that. And you start using a little bit of imagination and realizing the technology and the capability behind stuff. I mean, Doug, I'm no, awesome guy on the computer or whatnot. I can mess around and whatnot, but I mean, you start using AI, and the next thing you know, and it's in everything. There every once in a while I'll have an image in Photoshop, that I just need to have like the sides of it a little bit wider, and you you basically just select the image and then you select that empty area and let AI fill it in.
Fill in the blanks, yeah.
It gives you 3 options and it takes about 2 seconds. And if you don't like those, you just hit the button again and it gives you 3 more options. And it's like, this is at consumer level. Think of what they've got at a higher level, government level. And when you're talking about stuff like deepfakes, and once again, how are we going to determine if this is a computer generated deepfake? Well, a computer is going to be the one to figure it out. And if this computer knows how to fake this computer out, so it's just this war. I mean, you start getting into computer viruses and stuff like that. And it's literally the battlefield of the future in one way, shape, or form.
I agree. Yeah. Some deep technology you can catch with your own eyes. You can catch something's not right with those micro expressions. But soon, within 2 years, easily, that ability is going to increase so much that the human eye is not going to be able to capture it. And like you said, only a computer is going to be able to know, gotcha, because I've been there, I've done that, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another thing that we've used in the Space Force for AI technology that I've experienced myself is in the training realm. We're able to create these virtual spaces. You've got the goggles. Well, you can do a virtual space where you put that on, and now you're in the environment, and you can look around. If you played those games, it's almost offsetting a little bit if you play those. And then the one that really caught my attention was augmented reality. You put that on and you see everything you saw before you put that on, but an image pops up in a 3D type of image, and you reach out and you're able to manipulate it. This exists today. I've done it myself in training environments. And you reach out and you grab the satellite and you virtually turn it. But really, you're going like this, and all your buddies are laughing at you because you're like, whoa, you look like a goofball. But it's really neat to be able to do that. So I see a lot of applications in training because, well, that's my specialty. I do that all the time. So that's where I'm thinking most, whoa, we could use it for this, or we could use it for that. AI is just really cool stuff.
No matter what you think of it, it's here to stay. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's not going anywhere soon.
Yeah. Well, Doug, I appreciate you so much. I will get back in touch with you, but man, thank you so much for joining the Ryan Files this week. I guarantee you the people are going to watch this and love it. So thank you so much. And awesome. Get back in touch if you have any curious ideas. And I can't wait to actually watch this episode just to let everything that you said sink in, because there's a lot of awesome information there. And man, I was expecting this to be awesome. I was not expecting it to be awesome. Thank you.
Well, sweet. Yeah, I'm glad. Happy to help out. Any one of those topics you want to explore more, you give me a holler, and we'll get back online. Okay. I hope to retire here pretty soon.
Oh,
that's my goal.
And then after 30 years, you can talk about stuff. Isn't that it? Something like that. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, 36 years serving our military in one way, shape, or another. The man who has seen a UFO by Pikes Peak, the one and only Doug Pelton.
Thank you. Of all the things to be remembered for, I saw a UFO. Awesome. Great to be on your show, Ryan. You're the best. I look forward to all your successes.
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you. Doug Pelton is awesome, and his story is incredible. Thank you so much for joining me on the Ryan Files, brother. You bless me. Doug was kind enough to offer to come back on the show in the future. So if there are any questions you'd like to ask a retired Air Force major and Space Force contractor, let me know in the comments. You can also send me a message through theryanfiles.com. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel. It's huge to the future success of this channel. It's just a click. Help us out. And if you really want to support the channel, hop over to theryanfiles.com. Buy one of our t-shirts or click the Become an Agent button where you will be forwarded to my Patreon page. Join for free or become an agent, secret agent, or 00 agent and enjoy additional content from the Ryan Files. Check it out. We can't wait to welcome you to our community. Coming soon, my friends, the episode you've all been waiting for. Myself and 4 others journeyed out to Table Rock Lake to do some sciencing, and we conducted some really cool experiments to measure the Earth. That's right. Be sure to tune in. You won't believe what we found. You all are amazing. Do something unexpectedly nice for someone else this week, and stay curious out there, my friends, and I'll see you right here next week on The Ryan Files.
The Ryan Files.
Houston, I'd like to report an IFO. I'm seeing Space Force coming over the horizon.
Copy, Endeavor. We're tracking it on our instruments now. We're currently tracking it on a tuba.